Good day, welcome. This is your Daily Med with Lady V. Today we look at Joshua's farewell address to the people of Israel. Joshua chapter 24. The story is in verse 1 through 15, but we will look at verse 14 and 15. Joshua chapter 24, verse 14 and 15. It says, "Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the God of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." So today we will see that Joshua is trying to ask the people, or to allow the people, to make a confession of their faith. In whom do they put their faith? In whom do they trust? So as a farewell encouragement to them, Joshua went through a historic lesson or sermon with the people. This farewell message was delivered to the people at Shechem. Here Joshua reviewed the history of the people. He told them how God began with Terah, the father of Abraham, and he continued on through to the time of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He reminded the people of the mighty acts of God. He talked about their deliverance from Egypt. He talked about the wilderness wanderings and the victory that God gave them over the Moabites. On and on he recounted how God brought them from the east side of Jordan. He then talked about how God gave them entrance into the promised land. He talked about their victory at Jericho and their destruction of the kings in Canaan, in verse 2 to verse 13 of Joshua chapter 24. He points out the Exodus, how God was with them by day and by night, with a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire to keep them warm and to separate them from their enemies. He talked about how God did all these things for them. So as he summarizes their history from Genesis even up unto this point in Joshua, there is one outstanding fact that is evident, and it is that God is sovereign. He is the sovereign God. So as he tells the story, he reminds them, and we can see in all these verses where God himself is saying, I did it. I did it. I did it because of my sovereignty. We look at verse 3 and he says, I took. In verse 4 he says, I gave. He says, I send. In verse 5. He says in verse 6 to 8, I brought you out. In verse 10, he says, I would not listen to Balaam when he tried to curse you, but I delivered you. In verse 12, he says, I sent you. So in Joshua giving this admonition, as we look in verse 13, he was saying Jehovah works according to his eternal purpose. And whatsoever Jehovah does, he does it best. And so he says, who can stay his hands? You have seen his mighty acts. You have seen his power at work. So Joshua said, such a God is to be feared. Such a God is to be reverenced. Such a God who is so sovereign, the one true and living God, he is to be obeyed. And we see that in verse 14. So he is to be served. How? In sincerity and in truth. So he says, listen, man, put away the other gods. Those that your fathers serve on the other side of the river. Those whom you indulge in and serve while you were in Egypt. But choose you this day, the very day he was speaking to them, whom will you serve? In fact, 3 set of gods are before you. Which one will you serve? Will you serve the Lord? Will you make a choice whether it is going to be the gods your father served beyond the rivers, or the gods that you served in Egypt, or even the Amorites in the land where you now dwell? Joshua was saying to them, man has a free moral choice. He is a free moral agent and can make a choice. That choice is to his or her eternal destiny, as well as what one does on a day-to-day basis. Remember, the scripture says, the whosoever call on the name of the Lord can be saved or will be saved. So he was letting them know, listen, you are a part of this group, the whosoever, as long as you call on the one true and living God. St. John 3 and verse 16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Next verse 17 goes on to say, he didn't send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. So as Joshua seeks a confession of faith in Jehovah from the people, he himself made a noble decision for himself and for his household. This has been an inspiration to succeeding generations of believers, but has for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Remember what he rehearsed in their ears. The sovereign God did it. He told them, I took your father Abraham from the other side of the flood. I gave him Isaac and Jacob and Esau. I sent Moses and Aaron. I sent the plagues into Egypt. I brought you out of Egypt. I would not listen to Balaam when he tries to curse you. In fact, he had to bless you. So you are blessed. I gave you the enemies. I put them in your hands. I destroyed them before you. I am the one who sent the hornets ahead of you. I have given you a land that you did not work for. So these people had before them the history of what God has done. And the prophet Joshua took the opportunity as a farewell message to remind them of what God has done for them. And therefore, the choice was up to them whether they would serve idols or they would choose the true and living God. Today, the same is up to each and every one of us to choose this day whom we will serve, foreign gods or idols, or the one true and living sovereign God. God bless you. Thank you again for watching, and may God bless the you.